let me introduce our next speaker, Jasmine Chmiel, who's going to talk about the impacts of Google digitization project on libraries. Jasmine is a graduate student at the Catholic University of America School of Library and Information Science. She is pursuing a Master in Library Information Science with a concentration in Law Librarianship. She has a certificate in Paralegal Studies from Georgetown University and a BA from the Berklee College of Music. Before entering the field of librarianship and pursuing her master's degree at the Catholic University of America, Jasmine worked as a practice group specialist for the financial regulatory group at Mayer Brown, and was also a senior marketing and business development coordinator at Hogan and Hartson and Latham Watkins. So you can see she has some background in legal studies, and perhaps that's one of the reasons for her interest in Google digitization project and the impact on libraries. But she's looking at this issue not just from the challenge of copyright, but also in light of other challenges such as the quality and an overall impact on libraries. So please welcome Jasmine. Jasmine, mic is yours.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello? Yes, can you hear me? Yes, can you hear me?
Jasmine, we can hear you, although we have some background noise at this point. But
let me try. Is this better? Let me try.
Well, there's still some echo.
Do you know? Perhaps I should. Do you know? Hang up my telephone. Shut my telephone.
Actually, Christina, I think that's because your mic is also on.
Hello? Hello. Okay. Hello? It sounds like it's a little better now. Better now. Let me try this.
Hey, Jasmine.
I don't know. Hear me now. I got rid of my telephone and I'm just speaking to my computer.
Yes, that's much better. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the impacts of Google digitization projects on libraries. I'm actually a non-traditional master's student. I went back to school after having a career in legal marketing, so I'm a little bit older, and when this paper I wrote actually for my information systems class, and it was my first class when I was going back to school. And coming to a master's later, when I was in college the first time around, we really didn't have Google, and it was interesting to me to see the impact it was making on academic work and how different things were this time around, having the capabilities of not only Google, but really all the kinds of digital catalogs. So here, I'm going to get started. I just wanted to give a little background. Okay, so what is digitization? It is the process of converting information sources like books to a digital format. This is done using optical character recognition, or OCR software. It's used to convert printed text or images into a digital format, which can then be searched, edited, and displayed online. So this is done with a lot of different collections, like in museums, and of course we're going to talk about as Google Books has done it. The original digitization projects focused on archival and rare works, projects like Project Gutenberg, but now mass digitization is the digital conversion of the entire contents of libraries without first making a selection of individual materials. So, Google decided they wanted to take this project on. In 2003, Google launched Google Print, and they later renamed it Google Books, which is what we have now. In 2004, they launched the Google Library Project, and the intent of that was to make it easier for people to find books online through mass digitization. Their ultimate goal was to work with publishers and libraries to scan every book in the world and to, in effect, create a huge searchable catalog of books in all languages. So to start out with, the Google Library Project partnered with major academic research libraries, including Oxford, Harvard, Stanford, and the New York Public Library. And now many, many more. There are dozens of libraries, academic libraries who've partnered with them. To date, they've completed their digitization projects with some university libraries simply because they've been at it for like a decade now. So they've also partnered with some publishing houses in order to sell electronic access to their books online. So there are 3 different types of categories of books that they have published online. Public domain works. Those are generally over 70 years old, and so basically anyone can view those for free in Google Books. Out-of-print works, but are still under copyright, those are orphan works, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later. And then also works in print and under copyright. So those are like modern works that people still have the rights to. Okay, and regarding academic libraries and academic and scholarly materials, Google Scholar was rolled out in 2004 as a separate Google product. It's a search engine that actually indexes the full text of scholarly articles, but it doesn't search the entire web, just within its own index. Citation counting was added to the index in 2006, which actually at that point put Google Scholar in competition with the expensive academic databases that we know. In 2007, Google Scholar partnered with publishers to digitize and host journal articles using the metadata necessary to make them searchable by topic in their index. And finally, as of 2012, Google Scholar's index has grown to the point that it now includes the most peer-reviewed online journals of Europe and America's largest scholarly publishers. So it's really gotten to be a huge and reliable resource. So how did that work out? So to date, since the beginning of this project, Google Books has scanned over 30 million volumes. There have been some issues still. For example, the OCR quality control issues still exist. They need to be improved, and I'll show you a picture at the end of just people who are working to digitize the material. Sometimes, you know, there's like folds in paper, or they get like their hand in the picture, so it's not perfect, but they're working on it. And also, translation issues are still being worked out when converting materials to different languages. Also, Google uses the book industry standards and communications subject headings as opposed to the Library of Congress subject headings. There's many, many more. There's like 200,000 Library of Congress headings as opposed to only 3,000 of the BSAC headings. So that's not quite in conjunction with the Library of Congress, which is what's actually used by most academic libraries. There was a study that I read that was performed in 2012 that found that Google Books can retrieve almost all of the books cataloged in WorldCat. So this researcher wanted to see how good Google Books was, how well it did work as a catalog. Were you able to find everything that you would find in WorldCat? And I believe the statistic was somewhere like over 75% of the books, and this was 3 years ago when the study was done. And the coverage provided by Google Books variety of services, whether it be like full view for works that were in the public domain, or snippets, previews, which are like sections of books that you could view, Library Link and Google Search, all of those services actually provided quite a reliable and valuable resource for comprehensive book searches. So that study found that Google Books was actually a very reliable catalog search engine. Okay, so what do libraries think about all this? In 2006, the National Commission on Libraries and Information Science held a symposium to discuss these mass digitization issues. Initially, libraries were worried that if e-books and digital scholarly materials were so easily available online, fewer people would visit libraries or need librarians. Also, another really big issue, and which has turned out to be somewhat of an issue, libraries and archives were concerned that Google wouldn't meet their exacting preservation and organization standards. However, I guess there was a lot of debate over this at NCLIS because, you know, the librarians wanted to make sure that everything would be perfect as the project was going forward, but Google really just wanted to get started and not let perfection be the enemy of the good. Still, it was very appealing for libraries to have their collections digitized for free in a relatively quick period of time. Because of the partnership that the academic libraries were having with Google, they were sending all of their materials over, and Google was just digitizing everything for them. I think most academic libraries, it would have taken them much, much longer to digitize their collections, and they probably wouldn't have been able to do it thoroughly and really get as much of their collection digitized. So publishers have had a little bit more of a problem with Google Books, and we're going to talk about a couple of lawsuits that have ensued. But here's the background on that. Publishers were concerned that Google would be their competitor and drive down prices below sustainability for their industry, which is, I guess, the same kind of thing that they were worried about with, like, you know, e-readers and e-books. So the opposition argued, however, that Google Books would actually be good for publishers by making their backlists more widely accessible. So books that people hadn't really been viewing or wouldn't be like finding in the bookstore, you'd be able to find on Google Books. People would be more likely to find them and purchase them. And also this way, Google was assuming the entire fiduciary risk for promoting those books, and the publisher wouldn't have to go through and pay for that marketing. Google Books only scans right now in-print copyrighted works with permissions from the rights holders, and then will only show snippets. So that's like if you're looking at a book in Google Books, it'll give you most of the pages of the book, but say, you know, you're reading along and you get to page 10 and it'll say, you know, this page is left out, you know, because they don't want to give you, they want you to buy the book. So that's basically what the snippet is. They will scan out of print and in copyright books, so that's like the orphan works, unless rights holders object to that. But they're waiting, so I guess that's kind of more of the legal gray area, that they're just finding some books that like nobody's really kind of claimed and scanning them and putting them online, and the rights holder, so they're not going out and seeking permission, they're just going to do it, and then if the rights holder objects, then they'll pull it. They charge users for their full text of in-copyright works, but right now works that can be found in the public domain are viewable for free. So what's the problem? So legal issues regarding copyright and fair use have been an issue most concerning to publishers and libraries. There has been debate over how to handle these orphan works. Those are the works that are in copyright but whose rights holders can no longer be traced, because publishers fear that Google would gain a monopoly over those works. Libraries are still mostly concerned about quality control. Sites like the Art of Google Books, which I'll show you an image from later, shows the OCR errors that occur during mass digitization projects. But I will say there's actually, after I wrote the paper, and I've included a slide with an update, the Authors Guild did actually go after the HATHI Trust, which is a consortium of libraries that kind of manages the Google digitized images. So they didn't only go after Google, they've also now gone after the academic libraries as well. But on to the next bullet. Some academic institutions involved in the Google Books and Libraries project partnered to form this HATHI Trust. And their mission is to steward and otherwise ensure the permanence of the digitized collections should Google cease to exist in the future, because they are a corporation. So what happened with the lawsuit? So the first lawsuit was the Authors Guild and the Association of American Publishers sued Google in separate suits in 2005, claiming massive copyright infringement by created a full-text search index without permission of the rights holders. Google claimed fair use and stated that they were in effect creating, all they were doing was creating a highly accurate card catalog, that indexed every word in a book instead of just like a description of the book. So it equates its free snippets that it offers online to users browsing books in a bookstore. Originally, they reached a settlement in 2008 where the settlement decided that Google would have to pay authors and create a books rights registry, but that decision was rejected in 2011, saying the settlement would give Google an advantage over competitors, particularly regarding ownership of the orphan works. In 2013, the same judge, Denny Chin of New York, he reversed his own ruling, supporting Google's claim that, in fact, their initiative does fall under the fair use doctrine, and that Google Books benefits society and actually boosts sales for authors and publishers, functioning like an in-store book display. So the judge that rejected the decision in 2011 went ahead and overturned his own decision in 2013. And when I read the case, he did talk about how, he's like, my own clerks are using Google to do the legal research, through Google Scholar. So it's become such a ubiquitous part of society. It is just needing to be accepted as kind of a part of the internet that we're going to use, and not, it is like a monopoly, but it's just like one that's come to be so widely accepted. So after that lawsuit, the Authors Guild went after HATHI Trust, and I just did some research on this because I learned this case happened after I had written this paper. And what happened there is the Authors Guild sued academic libraries who had digitized millions of in-copyright books in order to create a digital search tool to locate books and conduct text mining across the volumes. The court ruled that the universities were protected regarding mass digitization by the fair use doctrine. So the court also ruled that the process of digitization and the storage of digital files is a fair use if the libraries provide full-text search functionality and full-text access for disabled individuals. So the fact that they're converting these to make them accessible now gives it a fair use for libraries to go ahead and make the copies. Regarding the non-disabled, the use is actually judged as being transformative, which is one part of the fair use test, if the function or purpose of the use is different from the original work. So the court endorsed the practice of retaining digitized copies in redundant databases to ensure the work's continued availability after copyright term expiration. So both Google and the HATHI Trust prevailed in their lawsuits that were initiated by the Authors Guild when they were sued. So what happens next? Now that the copyright and fair use issues are worked out, libraries and publishers can continue to collaborate with Google to complete their digitization projects without fear of infringement or legal issues. What happens, though, to the collections if Google ceases to exist? So that's why HATHI Trust was formed, but there still exists the question, besides HATHI, would anyone else step in to steward the collections? Could anyone else even afford to manage the volume and scope of the project of, those 30 million volumes that have been digitized and are still moving forward? And still new universities are signing agreements to do digitization with Google every day. So going forward, libraries should really evaluate their own tools, their own internally developed products, like their federated search tools, against Google's products like Google Scholar. How do they measure up? So as the judge was saying, we are now using Google Books, Google Scholar so much that they are kind of becoming a standard practice tool. And university tools, say like federated search tools like Summon, maybe it's getting to be time that universities are really evaluating them, and they're either going to need to up the game with those types of federated search tools, or would it get to the point that university libraries are then partnering with Google Scholar. So in conclusion, I think taking advantage of Google's products and partnerships can allow librarians to focus their time and resources towards providing more personally tailored and specialized research services to their patrons. So, I think that if we take advantage of the tools that Google is offering to libraries, It's going to allow librarians to it's going to free them up from a lot of those like technical obligations and cataloging and things like that they need to do, and give them more time to focus on their patrons and doing research work. And, oh, I think I lost a slide here. I lost my question slide. Sorry, okay, I had an image there of, I don't know where it went. Okay, sorry about that. I'm over, and I'm open for questions.
Jasmine, we don't have any questions in the chat area. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, let me thank you for your presentation and updating us on Google digitization projects and how it impacts library. Thank you very much.